What's up, everyone? I'm here on my NFL Week 5 DraftKings recap and lineup review. Sorry we're getting out a day late. I was out of town yesterday, but we're here nevertheless. So let's go ahead and take a look at this week's lineups. Okay, so I just wanted to show you the $1 million lineup really quickly. We have a Brian Hoyer to George Kittle stack that won this guy $1 million. So just quickly, the only handful of players I did not play that this guy did in this lineup were Aaron Jones. I wanted nothing to do with the Packers backfield, so props to him for committing to him and just playing him, but I wanted nothing to do with it. I also did not play Odell Beckham, who put up 21.5 points. Hopefully he can come back and be as good as he was, up to the point of his injury there. So anyway, let's jump over to DraftKings now. So what I'm going to show you is a contest right here where this is a GPP. I entered 10 different lineups, and 6 of them were actually able to cash. So, that was pretty cool. We can see here my top scoring lineup at 161 points actually was a Brian Hoyer to George Kittle stack. Got Hoyer at sub 5%, well, not quite sub 5%, I should say, but just right at 5%. A little bit surprised by that. George Kittle sub 1%. Not surprised by that at all. I was very happy to get him in here. And luckily the overtime, I'm pretty sure the overtime is when he caught his touchdown. I haven't gone back and looked at film and whatnot yet, but was stoked to have him hit. Like that's just like what DFS dreams are made of right there. When you can have your sub 1% player score over 20 DK points, that's just awesome. So the rest of the lineup did okay. Melvin Gordon absolutely smashed. I thought Melvin Gordon was a pretty easy play. 6K, was finally healthy. Didn't have to worry about Oliver taking some of his snaps. It was pretty easy for me to plug and play Melvin Gordon in every type of content this week. I'm not going to show you my cash game lineup, but I did play him in cash, and yeah, he just killed it this week. Gurley was a big disappointment for me. Played him quite a bit of lineups. I was a little bit surprised to see him as highly owned as he was. I thought that the general consensus of the public was going to be that they were still a little bit hesitant to play anybody against the Seahawks, but obviously that was not the case here. I'm sure Gurley will get back on track next week. I don't even know if they play. I haven't even looked at the schedule or anything yet. So then I went Antonio Brown. The dude's matchup proof. He should have had close to a 40-point DK game here. One like 30-plus yard receiving touchdown, I think it was called back because I think it was David DeCastro was holding on the play on the offensive line for the Steelers, so that was a bit disappointing, of course. Then we went Jarvis Landry. Like, if you look at this lineup, you've probably have noticed, aside from George Kittle and Brian Hoyer, everywhere else I went usage. Like, I went with super high volume usage players. Jason Witten is on the field for every single snap so far of the Dallas Cowboys season. He's like the highest used tight end in the league. One of them, I should say. Golden Tate's one of the highest used wide receivers. Jarvis Landry is. Antonio. Both of these running backs are top 5 in usage. It was just 100% a usage lineup. And that's why the reason my mindset behind that was if I could get Hoyer and Kittle to hit, all I needed was, players to put up 15 to 20 DK points behind them to kind of, get me a really good scoring lineup. And that was really my thought process there. Went with the Steelers defense here. Obviously I probably should have went elsewhere considering they were the highest price defense on the board, but ultimately the lineup still ended up working out. So no regrets here. As far as Landry goes, I faded Devontae Parker. Someone was really giving me a lot of grief about saying that I thought this Titans-Dolphins game could be a shootout. The real reason I thought it could be a shootout was if Mariota played. And at the time I made that video, it looked like he was going to play. And he really still had a chance to play all the way up till game time, but I should have made it a lot more abundantly clear in that video. If Mariota wasn't going to play, I was not going to stack really too much of anybody in that game. So I defeated Devontae Parker. He ended up getting injured. Got pretty lucky with that. I think Jarvis Landry was able to salvage with a receiving touchdown. As far as Golden Tate goes, Golden Tate was a pretty interesting play for me because I usually don't play guys against the Panthers like this. But the more I thought about it, it was like, okay, the Panthers are a heavy zone defense, and when it comes to zone defenses, like you're really hoping that the pressure can get there because against a zone defense, someone's going to get open unless you just call the perfect zone against that specific play. So you need your pass rush to get there. Well, the thing was the Panthers' pass rush was demolishing Matthew Stafford and that Lions offensive line in that game. So that's really why Tate didn't really get involved as much as I thought he would. So I could have pivoted to somebody else here, obviously would have scored a lot more points there. So let's take a look at the next lineup here. And this is an Aaron Rodgers, Randall Cobb, and Des Bryant stack. So here, once again, went with Melvin Gordon, went with Duke Johnson. He was able to get a late game touchdown. Cobb let me down. So yeah, I didn't play too much of Davante Adams, but I did play some of him. And yeah, most of my Davante Adams lineups just didn't do well. I don't think I played any Davante Adams lineups in this contest. But yeah, I mean, I'm shocked that Davante Adams just got popped in the mouth not that long ago by Danny Trevathan, I think it was. Was in the hospital, laid up overnight, and still came back and just looked great. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad he's healthy. I'm glad he's doing well, but just really hard to believe someone could turn around from a concussion that quickly. But props to him for sure. Definitely didn't help Randall. I thought, like, if Jordy Nelson went down, like, I thought that would help Cobb a little bit. Really didn't do too much. So it is what it is. I'll be honest, I didn't really get to see too much of that game. I was actually traveling at the time. But, you know, it was obviously, I was able to catch the tail end of that, literally like the last 15 seconds. So I just saw the late Davante Adams touchdown from Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers, I mean, there's not too much to say about him. I mean, I was a little bit surprised he didn't have more passing yards, but, you know, 32 rushing yards, I actually am not too surprised by that either. Then I went T.Y. and Shepard. Was a little bit surprised Shepard was over 10% owned in the contest. He went down with an injury. You know, this whole entire Giants receiving core is just getting beat up. It looks like Brandon Marshall and, not Sterling Shepard, excuse me, Odell are down for the season now. I'm not even sure what Sterling Shepard's injury is at this point. I haven't heard. I just saw that he went down, and I don't know how serious it is, so hopefully he can heal up and we'll be okay. As far as T.Y., like, I mean, he was a chalk in this contest, but, I mean, can you blame me? The dude nearly had 200 receiving yards. Wasn't too surprised to see him go off. He could have had an even bigger day if he could get in the end zone, but, you know, it is what it is. Then I went Severian Jenkins. Yeah, he was a chalk here. Very, very happy he was able to get into the end zone because I played a bunch of Jenkins this week. Not too much to say about him. He didn't have a lot of receiving yards, 6 receptions. Just very, very fortunate he was able to get in the end zone. Then we went Dez. Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit surprised that T.Y. was higher owned than Des Bryant in the contest, but was happy to see Dez have at least a solid day. I mean, 16 points is about what I expected out of him, honestly. That's why I didn't go overboard on Dez. But yeah, then I went Eagles D. So another solid scoring lineup here. You know, nothing, you know, to write home about, so to speak. But anytime you have GPP lineups that can put up, you know, at least in the money, you know, consistently. This is well into the money here. So, you know, I got paid relatively well considering. So I can't complain too much about this lineup. Moving to the next one here, dropping to 150 points. This is a Aaron Rodgers to Jordy Nelson stack with Des Bryant once again. Went Blunt and Gordon here. I've already talked about Melvin Gordon quite a few times, but I went with the LeGarrette Blunt to Eagles correlation play here in my defense there, you can see. So I thought this was a smart play just because I figured Blunt would, first off, I thought the Eagles would win this game soundly, which they did. Now, the one interesting thing I went here that you might see is I actually have a little bit of a negative correlation here with Andre Ellington. And exactly what I was expecting to happen happened. I did not think Andre Ellington would get into the end zone. And it's one of those things that I only assumed this would be a negative correlation if Andre Ellington scored a touchdown. I did not expect Ellington to score a touchdown, so that's why I still went ahead and played an opposing player on the defense that I picked, you know, heading up against them. So, yeah, I thought this was a smart play. And that kind of worked out for me. Once again, went Jenkins at the tight end. Once again, went Jarvis. You know, I mean, this is kind of, you know, players I was building around in other lineups. It just, you know, no one player aside from Melvin really went off. And, you know, to have a player, you know, have a lineup full of players, you need them, at least 2 to go off, in my opinion, to really, really do well. So, Jordy only had 2 receptions, but still put up 10 DK points. So, yeah, I mean, he had kind of a quiet game. I know he went down with an injury, but came back, I think, there. But he really wasn't on the field late in the game. So, actually, I am a little bit surprised to see Jordy higher owned than Severian Jenkins, though, to be honest. Not by much, but still higher nevertheless. So let's take a look at another lineup. Once again, another 150-point lineup here. This was my McCown to Jenkins stack here, and, you know, it did fine. You know, once again, Had Dez here. You can see I played Dez actually a little bit more than I wanted to, but was still fortunate enough to have most of those lineups do well. I had Melvin Gordon and Blunt once again. I was really high on Melvin Gordon and went with that Eagles to Blunt correlation once again. Gurley let me down here, but there's not really too much to talk about in this lineup. Everybody I've kind of hit on already. Just another, kind of well-rounded lineup for the most part. I had two players let me down here in Blunt and Gurley, but Melvin Gordon was able to pick up the slack and, once again, kind of had a well-rounded output of everybody else. Moving to our 147-point lineup. Here I went with an Aaron Rodgers to Nelson stack once again. Went with a Le'Veon Bell lineup here. And yeah, I was hoping Bell could do a little bit more. Like 10 receptions is just nuts. Like if you would have told me Le'Veon Bell would have had 10 receptions in this game, I would have thought he put up at least 30 DK points. That didn't happen, obviously. Yeah, so I went with the Dolphins defense here, and I can't believe they were under 5% owned like this, and that just tells me here that people were not looking at their lineups before lock. Like up to lock, once I heard that Mariota was not going to play, I put as many Dolphins defense teams in there as I could. I don't think I did it too many times in this contest, but I decided to do it in this specific lineup, and it worked out. I mean, the Dolphins defense was kind of a no-brainer for me. I was a little bit surprised to see them that low owned. So yeah, then I went T.Y., Andre Ellington. I've already talked about those guys. As far as Kenny Stills go, this was 100% just a pivot off of Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker, who I both knew were going to be somewhat popular this week. So, it was just a chance I was taking there, sub 5%. If he could have caught 4 or 5 passes and a touchdown, would have done a lot of damage to those guys as well. Then I went with another 2 tight end lineup, which I don't do that often, but this week I actually did it a handful of times. Went Hunter Henry and Jenkins. Jenkins was the chalk. I knew Hunter Henry was going to be sub 10, probably sub 10% owned. And yeah, this was the week that we've been waiting for with Hunter Henry. He didn't have a huge game by any means, only had 3 receptions, but he was heavily targeted in the red zone. He was on the field a ton. This was where we saw kind of the changing of the guard, so to speak, between Antonio Gates and Hunter Henry. So I expect Hunter Henry to be a guy that we can look at a lot moving forward. Yeah, so nothing too special in this lineup by any means. So rounding out with our last lineup here that cashed, this was a Dak Prescott to Ezekiel Elliott stack. So I decided to make it a little bit different here. Like my hopes for this lineup, because I didn't play Dez, and that was probably the traditional thing to do here, right, was play Elliott, Dez, and Dak. But I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a little bit different. So what I decided to do was go Dak to Elliott. And my thought process here was I was hoping that Dak would have, like 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns, which he did. And then Ezekiel Elliott would have 2 rushing touchdowns or so. And that meant that majority of the touchdowns were going to them on the ground. So I didn't have to worry about those, other guys, having explosive games because of a lot of touchdowns, right? Obviously, that really didn't materialize. Elliott was able to get over 100 rushing yards, but didn't get into the end zone. Only had 1 reception, so hardly any correlation between Dak and Ezekiel Elliott there. But Dak did have a pretty good game. Obviously, 3 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. To get him up over 30 points, was really surprised to see Dak this lowly owned in this contest, to be honest. But yeah, also had a little bit of Larry Fitzgerald. One of the reasons I decided to play Fitzgerald here was I had Zach Ertz in the flex. Once again, a 2 tight end lineup here. And I wanted to have a little bit of a game stack. I think this is the only lineup on DraftKings this week I played Larry Fitzgerald. Like, I just did not have many Cardinals. The only Cardinal I had a ton of exposure to was Andre Ellington. So, yeah, then I went Pierre Garçon and Dante Moncrief. Moncrief was a guy that I was all in on just about. Like, I played him a bunch in other contests. And the thought process there for me was pretty simple, right? No Jack Doyle. And Jack Doyle was actually a top 5 tight end in usage right now. He's up over 20% in all of that team's targets. So I think it's like 21.2 or something like that. So all of those targets that, Jack Doyle was getting had to go elsewhere. And I didn't think many of them were going to go back to those backup tight ends. Moncrief is 6'2". He's, significantly larger than T.Y. I figured he was going to be a really good red zone target for Brissett. So that was my thought process there. It ended up being on the $1 million lineup, even though he really didn't do too well. But I love the thought process there. I was really happy to see that, I wasn't the only guy who was on him. I talked about him a lot in my live stream. So definitely was one of those spots that I think that I don't regret it. And if this game, was played 10 times over, I'd probably play them all 10 times. So went Garcon as well. Yeah, and then Zach Ertz was just, once again, a volume play there. Bengals defense, 6 sacks. I called it in my main picks video there on Wednesday. I thought that, this could be a game where we could see the Bengals get quite a few sacks. I haven't seen the game yet, but out of those 6 sacks, I'd be willing to bet that, 3 of those or so were definitely 100% due to Tyrod Taylor just holding the ball. So anyway, that's all the lineups I want to show you this week. Tell me, how many of your lineups did well? Did you make profit this week? Just, tell me, did any of my picks help you? Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully I will see you guys on my picks videos this week. Remember, I upload every Wednesday and every Friday, so hopefully I will see you on those videos as well. Thank you for watching, and if you did, be sure to leave it a like, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.